Another 90 days, another season come to a close. Though this season played out essentially like the previous, there is still plenty to recap and review. Let's get straight into it and cast ourselves back to the 12th of September. The first day of Season 2 was absolutely front-loaded with content, mostly in the form of the new Party Mode. Party Mode was a separate 4-player cooperative experience centered around different minigames. The 4 that dropped today was Get Lit, Dig It, What's Cooking, and Speedrun. There is a decent amount of challenge to be found here, so much so that attempting these with randoms will more often than not result in a tough uphill battle of the clock. This is especially true with Dig It, in my opinion the hardest of all the minigames. It also happens to be the game that requires cooperation the most. Sure, with the other 3 you're all trying to achieve the same goal, but you usually don't need to actively be around other players, or even pay that much attention to what they're doing at all. That's not the case with Dig It. This game requires you to scour the Tar Valley map for fossils. Then you take these to the center of the map to build the skeleton of some ancient creature. As the rounds go on, the bones begin to require more than one person to carry them, some even needing 3. This is where the crux of the problem with Dig It lies. I have yet to try any of the modes with a full team of 4, all on mics, but I can imagine problems like being on the complete opposite side of the map when your team needs you are mitigated slightly when your team can actually verbally talk to you, instead of just spamming the help button. What's Cooking is quite fun. Set in Beatdown, it's a game where you throw various ingredients into floating pots to cook up meals. It can be quite challenging to get used to the throwing arc, but after a while, I found myself throwing food from across the map with ease. This one is definitely rewarding to master. Get Lit in Surreal Summit has you traversing an ever-increasingly dangerous map to light lamps. Vertical travelers like Catbat Engine thrive in this mode, as they can easily zoom up to floating platforms. You keep your own candle lit by returning to the fire on the surface, or by passing one of your teammates' lit candle. The final minigame that dropped today was Speedrun. This one was pretty self-explanatory, and was an easy game to love from the start, an obstacle course set in Tiki Towers. You choose your fastest character and race through various checkpoints and laps round by round. All of these party modes are so simply designed, I wasn't surprised when Season 3 announced a new version of What's Cooking and Speedrun, but we're getting ahead of ourselves there, aren't we? Once you finish the 4 rounds of a particular game, you get to battle a boss. Every boss is usually the epic relic station of that particular map, except for Dig It. And the way you defeat the boss is by basically playing a souped up version of the game you've just been playing. Uka Uka requires you to race after him, shooting rockets his way as you pick him up. Wumperbat needs you to have sticks of dynamite logged towards him, just as you did the ingredients. And the dragons from Surreal Summit submit to lit rockets. The boss for Dig It is like a volcano or something. Overall, these bosses do serve as a nice cherry on top, with that little extra Crash Bandicoot character that I think most people got this game for to begin with. Hopefully this means we're one step closer to some form of single player campaign. We can only hope. I think there maybe could have been an effort to make the modes feel a little bit more randomly generated, as every game is virtually identical every time you play it, and the only thing stopping it all becoming very repetitive is the difficulty. Once you become a god at these game modes, there really isn't anything they can offer you anymore, barring a few cosmetics here and there. Some other gameplay related updates were also added this day. The way the battle pass worked with XP was changed. The first 30 levels were curved, while the remaining 70 were all 8,000 XP. This is less than the previous season's 9,000 XP. However, deluxe version players were not granted the luxury of starting at level 25 this time. Unless you bought the game this season, then you got it. Instead, most of us had to grind all the way from the beginning. I thought it would be a fun experiment to play Rumble this season by doing the bare minimum to collect all the cosmetics offered, not going out of my way to earn extra XP, and seeing where it would land me at the end of the season. And more importantly, how much it would cost me in real world money to finish the pass. Find out at the end of the video where I ended up. That's right, microtransactions were officially added this season. Crash coins is the currency you can unlock throughout the pass, or pay for with money. At the moment, all they do is skip levels in the battle pass, but I venture to guess eventually they'll add some form of online store. They added a strafe button to the game. While holding R2, you can stiffly move side to side. For most characters, this isn't really useful, but Brio and Cortex do like the improved flexibility with aiming. Dingodile's strafe, however, does not work the way you would expect. You cannot lock your aiming and strafe at the same time. You will turn around, even if you are holding R2. Maybe in future updates they can tweak how this works for some characters. When the season first begun, we had a coinciding event with cosmetics to unlock. The event was untimed, and therefore it was assumed, at least by me, that it was there to complete at any time, or at least until the next event started. This ended up sadly not being the case, and the event disappeared before my brother and I could collect the floater crash at the end of the event. This was slightly frustrating, as the skin is now the only cosmetic we're missing in the entire game, not counting the ones that you can unlock at any time with any given character. So Toys for Bob, here's an open letter to put Floater Crash as one of the first items in your inevitable online store. I don't feel complete without it. A massive patch was also released. A nerf to Cortex regarding his transformation shots, cooldown and effect. A buff to Brio, a buff to Ripperoo, and of course the nerf that I mentioned last video, Entropy's melee combo cancelling her time tethers, and Coco's quantum wall was given a deeper opaque blue/red to increase visibility. In terms of relics, some adjustments were made to how double relics spawn, where and when, to reduce clumping. Relic stations such as Flame Trap and Bombardment will now damage powers that are placed on banks, such as guards or spitters. Flame Trap now deals ×2 damage. Relic stations such as Junker Ball can no longer refresh the timer on your Junker Ball until your first has run out. Dragons were buffed to deal damage more reliably, while also adding an extra dragon at each bank. Lani Loli now grants a 10% damage reduction buff, as well as a speed boost. Finally, the worst relic station in the game has a little bit more promise. On the 14th of September, the first TFB Lab mode released, Capture the Flag. But here's where I have some slightly bad news. It was next to impossible for me to get any TFB Lab games over the entire season. I would easily spend upwards of 40 minutes waiting with only a single other person in the lobby. I don't know whether that's just the way the servers are set up makes this so, or whether I was just having some really bad luck, but I was not able to get any sort of meaningful footage or gameplay to review any of the TFB Lab modes this season. With the new TFB Shuffle playlist in Season 3, maybe I'll get a second shot at trying them, but for now the experimental modes remain a mystery to me. A glitch was also discovered at this point that made it so your customization on your profile and the character you played last would be completely erased every time you booted up the game. Toys for Bob became aware of this glitch pretty early on, but it wouldn't be until the drop of Season 3 that it would actually be fixed. Everyone would also be displayed as level 5s in games when they score a knockout or they score top performer, so that was weird. On the 21st of September, Team Takedown returns. The matches were feeling as volatile as ever. This was also the only weekend I was able to actually get into a TFB Lab game. I played 2 games of Wumpa Whale, lost both times, and it wasn't very fun. Even though I imagine I didn't get the full experience, I just gotta admit, it wasn't very fun. On the 28th of September, a new map released, Waist Deep. Based on the sewer/lab level from Crash 4, the common relic stations include Smog Surge, giving you a speed boost and a poisonous trail that'll damage enemies, Blob Bomber, which, like Bank Barrage, will shoot projectiles towards the bank. But be careful, because these guys can also continue to follow you. And the epic relic station Shrink Ray, which will shrink the entire opposing team, making them very susceptible to knockback attacks. This map is pretty solid and has some great vertical areas to get the jump on enemies banking. The event for the map was interesting. Similar to Beatdown, the event collectible was unlimited, so you could collect as many as you wanted. You were however expected to collect 65 in 7 days, so the game expected you to play on average just over 9 games a day. I'm all for having the freedom to collect as many as you want per day, but the amount here is just way too high. A patch released alongside it. A nerf to Flytrap Spitter, essentially reverting its previous buff, which I can understand. Flytrap had almost a monopoly on the powers while the previous buff was active, so even though it meant I could no longer take advantage of it, it was still a positive thing to see. A buff to Garbage Dump, and improvements to placing powers on banks, increasing the prioritization to limit the amount of people misplacing powers away from banks. On the 5th of October, the 3v3 game mode made an appearance over the weekend. Since half the games I play contain a bot per team anyway, 3v3 was basically just a cleaner way to play Vanilla Rumble. Not much else was different. On the 12th of October, a new game mode for Party Mode dropped. Balloon Bounce. This one was the easiest one yet, however, it may also be the most fun. With Catbat, it's very easy to chain dive after dive as you pop balloons faster than any other character. Since it takes place on Calamity Canyon, Oxide is obviously the boss. He's pretty easy. Just collect the rockets while avoiding his blasts. Like I said, it's the easiest boss yet. I can foresee some changes made to Balloon Bounce to make it slightly more challenging, which would be a welcome adjustment, but overall, the fun outweighs that problem for me. On the 18th of October, another patch was sent our way. A nerf to Flytrap Spitter, the charge now only went up to 2 and you could only have 2 alive per player. A nerf to Wumpa Bat, a nerf to Cortex, a buff to Ripperoo, a buff to Dingo Dial, a buff to Entropy. Flytrap was certainly in a much more manageable space now, and Tropy thankfully was getting some much needed attention. Toys for Bob was also having some unforeseen issues with the bouncing bubbles on Beatdown and the slowing mushrooms on Tar Valley. Early in the month they removed both these relic stations from their respective maps, but today they completely removed Tar Valley, citing a lack of interesting gameplay without them. Curiously, Beatdown remained on the map playlist. On the 19th of October, it marked not only the start of the Halloween event, but also the release of Junction. The Halloween event lasted for 2 weeks and added some nice touches to all the maps. Autumn leaves, pumpkins, a shroud of darkness, or a deep red fog, as well as some new music tracks from the Crash series that lean towards the more spooky. The event also doubled as the new map event. Every character available was given a skeleton skin that could be unlocked on the event-specific pass. 75 pieces of candy had to be collected over 14 days, making the average games to play per day at just over 5, a much better average than the Waist Deep event. There were also lollipops that could spawn on occasion, as well as gummy bears that could spawn if the epic relic station of Junction was activated, that station being Blue's Beatdown. This will spawn 3 of those ghost musicians that'll cover the 2 banks and the middle gem path in a dome that'll damage enemy players, essentially giving your team absolute control over the map for the period that it's active. If you're on the enemy team, you can damage and destroy the musicians, but you're likely to die trying. The common relic station is called Masquerade. The station bestows a random quantum mask from the ones that already exist in the game. A bit of a lazy addition, I do admit, but it can be interesting to get certain masks in certain situations. I know it's not in the nature of live service games, but I would love for there to be a feature added in the future to use these holiday-inspired versions of different maps. It does a lot to spice up the feeling of each map. Shame we didn't get a Tar Valley one though. Could have been the best one. Only 1 week later, on the 26th of October, we get the early access to the only hero of this season, Ripto. This event ran parallel to the final week of the Halloween event, and I gotta say, it was very fun having so much to collect for the week. In addition to the candy, Ripto's horn was also popping up once every game, for a total of 6 per day. To complete Ripto's pass, you'd need to play an average of 4 games per day, which was already less than what you would have to be playing on average for the Halloween event. Now, to actually talk about the character himself, Ripto is bad. He is weak both offensively and defensively, slow, and cannot carry any more than 90 Wumpa. He has some interesting moves, a standard fireball attack, a knockback tsunami that can act as your double jump, and a lightning strike you can call down to attack close or far away enemies. The issue is, these attacks do almost no damage. The only plus I can give him is that in a bind, the knockback can stop people from banking, but Ripto should be able to do much more than that. Playing with him was not fun. And even the best players seem to have trouble adjusting to him too, because I never had a problem killing them in games when I was playing as something else, even other Riptos. It's going to take a lot of work to improve him, hopefully they can work something out. For now, Ripto is going all the way to the bottom of my list at a 4 out of 10. On the 2nd of November, Zap Trap came back. It's no different than the last 2 times. I would prefer to see some slight shake-up in how these modes work when they return, but I guess Toys for Bob is counting on the mode being enough, since it's only ever been limited time. On the 8th of November, we got yet another patch to cover. A nerf to Coco's spiral/wall cooldown, a buff to Ripto's health, a buff to crash dash damage, a buff to engine's boombox damage, a buff to scorer power charging, a nerf to booster power charging, a nerf for flytrap spitter, a buff to big bonsai. This was a bit of a big hit for Coco. I loved that if you were quick enough, you could always have one quantum wall up at any given time. Now, not only does the wall drop sooner, but it actually takes longer to charge your next one. I do admit it was an amazing move, but I feel like at some point you have to value fun over balance and try look elsewhere. On the 9th of November, Team Takedown event came back. Same as before though, no changes, just new cosmetics for knocking out enemies. On the 16th of November, finally a new limited time mode comes around, Wumparama. Now this one is really fun. Part of the gameplay loop of regular Rumble is picking particular routes around maps so that you spend the least amount of time with a full tank of Wumpa. Otherwise, collecting more is superfluous, other than to take potential Wumpa from your opponents. Wumparama, however, gives you such a high Wumpa tank that this problem no longer occurs. You can hold up to 1,000 Wumpa, with the new goal being 3,000, but be careful. Not only can you have more Wumpa knocked away if you get into a fight, but being the player with the highest Wumpa count will out your location to enemy players. If your team is smart, you can finish Wumparama games in under 2 minutes. Getting a few gem boosts and coordinating a single drop-off can sometimes be enough to reach that 3,000 goal. I really hope this mode makes a return. As simple as it is, it was really fun to just go absolutely nuts with the Wumpa counts. On the 21st of November, the new power of the season dropped, Minefield. Now, Minefield is a little bit different than the other explosive power of the game. When you trigger Minefield, your jumps will spawn up to 10 mines. You can use this to cover places of interest like banks or gem paths, to take control of them faster. The damage they deal isn't massive, but in a frenzy, it can knock enemies down to a more manageable health spread. Now, I know I said 10 mines, but if you play as Ripperoo or Tropy, for some reason it's 5. I don't know why, it's probably a glitch and I haven't checked to see whether it's fixed yet. Minefield is certainly interesting, and I'm more neutral about it than TNT. TNT, a power that I've actually warmed up to quite a lot. After people settled down and stopped using TNT after the initial event, being the one with the courage to actually play with it worked out in my favour, and it's still tons of fun to drop down and pass the TNT away milliseconds before it explodes. I think I'll need to test Minefield a little more to see how I'm feeling about it, but for now, it's about a 6 out of 10 power. The event ran similar to Ripto. With the event collectible hard hats, however, it was raised to 7 a day, which made it so that every day you had to play a minimum of about 3.5 games to get the entire pass filled out. A small but very welcome change. On the 30th of November, we had the boss Beatdown event. This weekend got us back into party mode to beat some bosses. A couple cosmetics, nothing crazy. And then we find ourselves on the 7th of December, and with that admittedly anticlimactic ending, we reached the finale to Season 2, and the intro to Season 3. Spyro dropped the very first day of Season 3, and while it took a bit to get used to the differing controls from his own game, I've begun to really like his playstyle. But we'll go more into detail about that next video. Oh, and by the way, as I said in the beginning, I spent the entire season only collecting the cosmetics, and never going out of my way to collect extra XP, and I ended up at level 79. I paid $30 in Australian money to get the crash coins necessary to complete the pass at level 100. So there you go. If you're someone who likes knowing how much effort to put in to get everything, maybe going for those extra XP bundles might be worth it. This season I'll go for as much XP as I can stand, and report back on how grindy it felt. Hopefully though, with the plethora of new events this season, it won't feel that boring. If you guys want more Crash Team Rumble content, or just want to watch what I've got coming up in 2024, please subscribe, I'll appreciate it immensely. And of course, thank you guys for tuning in to DaAcorn.